Hello and welcome to the Mobile Accessible Games interview series. I'm your host, Aaron Spelker. Mobile Accessible Games is a group that's dedicated to all things about mobile accessible gaming, and through our interview series, we interview game developers, accessibility advocates, as well as accessibility content creators. This week, we are doing something a little bit different. We do it every year. It is our Game of the Year interview session, and the interviewee is going to be me, and we're going to have a guest host, and that is going to be Brandon Cole. Now, for those of you who followed the channel for a long time, we've interviewed Brandon before. He is an accessibility consultant. He's worked on great franchises like the Last of Us series, Forza, as well as Mortal Kombat. So he is one of the people who's in the room about gaming accessibility. We're very excited to have him here and be our guest host for this year's Game of the Year results. So Brandon, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. It is an honor to be here to help guest host this. It's the first type of situation like this that I've ever done before. So it's very. I love new experiences, and so I welcome this one as well.
I make the same joke every year, but I have to get a guest host in here because I don't want to interview myself about Game of the Year. I can't be
right.
host and the interviewee. So I bring in a new person every year to kind of be our guest host. So you got tapped this year. We're gracious enough to say yes. So we're very excited.
Absolutely.
Now, Brandon, just for those people who may not know you, I gave you a little bit of introduction, said a little bit about you, but tell people who you are, where they can find you, what you're up to, as much as you can. I know you work on a lot of
things.
Absolutely.
So
you're not allowed to say so.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. There's certainly things I can't say. I live a life of NDAs, but I am Brandon Cole, professional accessibility consultant in the game industry. You pretty much ran through the highlights of my career pretty well. But I'll say basically that what I do is I work directly with game developers to help them make video games accessible to the totally blind, which is something that a lot of totally blind people seem to appreciate. So I'll keep doing it until they don't appreciate it anymore.
Nice.
I actually have a book coming out that is going to be a resource for game developers, and basically the idea is something they can literally carry with them that will help them make games more blind accessible.
Oh, that's great.
That will be coming out later this year. That's the plan anyway. As long as everything goes according to plan, that'll be later this year.
Nice.
And if you want to find me, it's pretty easy. Look for Super Blind Man essentially everywhere. Super Blind Man on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube, on Mastodon. I'm Super Blind Man at peoplemaking.games on Mastodon. Pretty easy to find. Yeah, I'm always up for a chat about accessibility or all things gaming. I'm a gamer too. I don't just work here. I play games too.
Nice. Now, Brandon, before we get into the Game of the Year, because people would be mad at me if I don't ask this, because so many blind people are like, "Oh, I'd love to, work in gaming and accessibility, and but I don't know how to do it." How did you get started in this industry?
Well, for me, it started with a blog. I've always kind of been an accessibility consultant in my mind, and my fiance noticed that. She noticed that whenever she played a game, she's sighted, by the way. Whenever she played a game that I couldn't play, I always came out with these ideas. I was like, if this game just had this and this, I could play it and it would be accessible. And she basically said, you should blog. Why aren't you writing this stuff down? At the time that I was before I was blogging, there wasn't really a resource that existed for game developers on how to make games more accessible to blind people. And she said, be that resource. And so I tried to be that resource, and that got me invited to a couple of conferences where I did some speeches and impressed some people. And eventually I got introduced to the people at Naughty Dog, and the rest is history. The Last of Us is the real launch point of my career, and I never looked back since.
No, that's excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you for all the effort you're putting forth on behalf of our community. It's much appreciated, and it is we're seeing leaps and bounds of accessibility being discussed and being put toward the forefront, as opposed to being an afterthought at the end of the game. So you're playing a part in that. So we appreciate that.
So a long way.
I'm going to now, I've played a little bit of host here in the beginning. I'm going to turn hosting duties over to you. We'll see how you do. And I will be the interviewee, and you are now in charge. So go ahead.
This is going to be terrible, isn't it? All right. No. Welcome, everyone, to the Mobile Game of the Year, Mobile Accessibility Game of the Year Awards. Happy again to be hosting this. Before we get started with the actual top five, I just want to kind of talk about the Game of the Year Awards themselves, and ask you how the voting process tends to go. Like, how is this all decided?
Yeah. So as I formulated the Game of the Year concept. What I didn't want to do was, you know, be where I decide what Game of the Year is, or a small group of people. You know, let me ask 5 people, and we determine what Game of the Year is. I wanted it to be the community that I am, supporting through mobile accessible games. I wanted them to decide what is the Game of the Year, what they thought was best, what they're talking about. So first off, it is voted on by the community members. Each community member gets one vote. They pick their Game of the Year. Now, what I did want to do was kind of focus them, so it wasn't just kind of anything wild and games no one, some people played and not played. So what is eligible in each given year is the games that have been reviewed that year by Mobile Accessible Games. So Mobile Accessible Games every Sunday puts out a game review of a game that's accessible on the iPhone to play as a blind person. I am completely blind, so I do the reviews around you need absolutely no vision. As a no vision person, this is how you can play this game. And if you happen to have some vision, then you have a slight advantage. But I always do it from the standpoint of no vision. Can you play this game? How accessible is it? And I put out, as I said, a game review every Sunday. And that ends up being about 50 games a year that I do. I take a couple weeks off around the holidays where I do not release games and really concentrate on putting out posts around people voting for Game of the Year. So I kind of take the month of December off. But I put out 50 games a year. Been doing this for 3 years. We're actually at 160 games. My first year I did at a pace more than one a week for a while there, but found that hard to keep up. But so we've done over 160 games that are out there. And that all came from, kind of like you were saying with your blog early on, where you were like, well, maybe I should just be the resource. When I went blind 5 years ago and I started saying, well, I want to play some games. I'm a gamer. I've been a lifelong gamer. What games can I play? And I started trying to look for that list of what are games that a blind person can play on the iPhone. I was just not really finding a comprehensive list. Sometimes you'd find an article where 3 or 4 games were mentioned. A lot of times those would be games that were no longer on, like Audio Defense, which is no longer on the App Store. Or I, might see a list that was longer, but it didn't really tell me anything. It's just like the name of the game. It didn't tell me, what exactly the game was or how accessible is it. So after kind of, grumbling in my head, where's this list? I decided to be the person, kind of like you, to be the resource and start creating the list. So, we're up to, 160 games. I really try to cover a wide variety of genres, so that, if you love word games, you'll find something. If you love RPGs, you'll find something. If you like first-person shooters, you'll find something. I want people who come to the group, no matter what type of games they like to play, to be able to look at that list of 160 games so far and say, oh, I see at least a couple games that are my type of games. I want there to be something for everybody in that list.
Yeah. So from being the resource to a very community-driven effort. I really like that. Speaking of genres, speaking of all the different genres of games that you look into for this is kind of a banner year, right? This is like the most amount of categories that have ever been in these awards.
It is. And it's been growing from the first year. I don't know. It's like 10 different genres that were voted for, then 13, and I forget what this one was, 16 or 17 different genres. And so what I love about that is, it shows that blind and visually impaired gamers love all types of games. We don't just love text adventure games or just audio games. Like we are a wide, diverse group who likes all types of games, just like any gamer likes all types of games. And that really comes through in that Game of the Year voting, where you see a wide variety of different types of games being voted on, and that's really exciting for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. As someone who works in game accessibility and strives to just provide as many experiences to the blind community as I can, that's how I set my own goals. Like I fully understand the diverse community we have, just as a blind community and a blind gaming community. And I realize that what we want is as many experiences as possible. So I set my career goals as genre goals. I want to provide this experience and that kind of experience, and a RPG, a shooter, all those things. I want to give them everything. So yeah, I totally get that. I think it's really great to see that bloom into this community as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get to it, shall we? Let's get to the top 5 games.
Great. Ready.
Starting with number 5, which is the one and only Magic Research.
Yes. Um,
Yes.
so I love this game. To tell people a little bit about it, it is a game where you are in charge of a fledgling magic school, a magic academy, and you are trying to build up this academy to eventually fight in the tournament of wizards. And along the way, you're building different buildings that give you different resources or different magical powers. You're going to hire students to help you train them and teach them to be wizards. You'll hire researchers to help you do all the various activities faster. And then along the way, you will fight in real time combat against enemies, where you are casting different spells, and trying to break down the enemy's defenses, get in different attacks, survive their onslaught of attacks as well. And it has a really varied type of enemies, so you can't just go in and be like find something that works for the boss, the first boss you fight, and be like, oh, I'll just keep doing that and win. You try to do that the next time you find a boss, and you'll lose terribly. So what I really liked about it is that you had to change up your strategy, you had to change out your loadout, you had to take on different types of abilities to to kind of win and get further in the game. It's also kind of an incremental game in that you'll eventually get so far and you can't really get any farther. You can't beat that boss, and you kind of reset your academy. You kind of like go back in time and restart, and you get to take with you some abilities and things that you've learned to then be able to blow through that boss and get to the next boss. So it has a lot of replayability with new things opening up, new schools of you start with fire and water, but then you learn other types of magic schools along the way. I won't spoil it, but you keep opening up new and new things that you get to try with new spells and new materials and new buildings and all that. So really varied, fun, replayable, and it takes you a while to kind of get through it and manage to actually beat win the tournament of wizards, which again, I'm a fully blind person and I was able to do it. So it's very accessible to be able to get there. Even though you have to move pretty quick to win the ultimate game. So now I think you told me offline that you have also played this game, right? So I mean,
yes, I have.
What were your thoughts?
The interesting thing about Magic Research is it's one of the games that I've discovered myself within the last year or so, because I've become a little bit obsessed with this idea of semi-idle games. To a certain point, this one is a little less idle than some, but the games where the biggest thing that you have to do is watch a bunch of numbers go up. and and that like it's a dopamine hit. It's like it's just something. There's something about that. Like every time you get more powerful, every time you get something new, and that that's something new, it means that this number goes up faster now. It like when you really break it down, that's what you're doing. You're watching numbers go up, and it's really it's cool. Like, I'm not criticizing it at all. It's a lot of fun. It's one of the most enjoyable games I found this past year, and it's great. Magic Research, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, you know what? So I agree with you. And there's some people, and even I can get bored of true idle games where it's just like get bigger or go faster, and that's it. What I liked about Magic Research, is that you have an end goal that you're headed towards, and you're driving towards. I mean, there's kind of a story there, and they do a great job of. You're always just like a step away from revealing something new or unlocking something new. So it really keeps you kind of engaged. So, you don't ever leave it for like, oh, let me just let that run in the background for 24 hours. So you keep going back to it. You keep tweaking and seeing what just opened up over the last 90 minutes, and then doing things. I slipped up there and said, I'd like that's a new game that just came out, and is reviewed here in January. Very, very similar. So if you liked Magic Research, you should check out Idle Like. You'll really like that one as well.
Yeah,
same kind of.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
I have no doubt. Yeah, they're definitely great games. And like you said, Magic Research is one of those games that does keep you coming back to it, and that is one of the good things about it.
Yeah,
All
and
right, let's. Sorry, go ahead.
speaking of that, I mean, even when you win the tournament, then you kind of come back and there's like, whatever you want to call it, like prestige mode, where it's like, okay, play the game, and you have no you know fire attacks, like it has like limitations,
Ah,
like try to beat this game with these restrictions on. So they have that too. So even after you've won it and you're like, all right, I'm all done, they provide you a different challenge, which is like try to beat it with these different limitations put on you. So that's
yeah,
kind of exciting too.
yeah. Keeps you coming back even after the end. I love it.
Right.
All right, well, let's move on to number 4, which is another kind of RPG style game, Eldrim Red Tide.
Yeah. Now, my group, the mobile accessible games, they love their RPGs. Usually, the last 2 years, RPGs have won. This is, number 4 is as high as they got this year, which is very interesting. Eldrim Red Tide, great RPG game. You really feel like you've entered a world. You're going to different locations. You're fighting enemies. You're gathering gear. You're making choices that change the story. Down the road. You make this decision, and when you get further into the story, it's different than if you had made another decision. You'll meet companions. You'll meet people that, again, depending on what you do, kind of changes the story. And what I really like about it is it's kind of open world. So instead of like a kind of RPG text adventure game where you're always kind of moving forward, and once you've visited that village, you never go back to that village because you're always forward moving. This is, you can go back to that village, and a lot of times you'll find, you come back and a new mission is there, or something that you did last time you were there has now, made the landscape different. So you really do kind of feel like you're living in this world. The storyline is you are trying to find your lost sister. The city's been attacked. She's disappeared. You're on a mission to now discover, what happened to your sister. And you fight through the lands and, uncover mysteries and things like that as you go. And it's just, nice and lengthy, and kind of gives that feel of a traditional RPG, level up your character, get gear, get loot, make decisions, type of game. And a real advancement. This company did Eldrum Untold, which was their first game, which was kind of in the concept. And as I reviewed that one, I said, this is showing signs of what it can be. And then when they put out Eldrum Red Tide, they really capitalized on everything they learned and made it bigger and grander and better. As you play that game, the battle mechanic in there is kind of a turn-based as opposed to real time. It's kind of a turn-based. You make your move, attack. They respond and attack, and you use your powers to maybe defend or block. So a little bit different in the battle scheme than Magic Research, which is kind of a real time battle mechanic. This is a turn-based, but has a lot of strategy of which weapon am I going to use, which weapon with its special power is best against this particular type of enemy. So you end up doing the same thing where you don't just always fight with the same weapon. You kind of determine which weapon is going to be best against the enemy set or group of enemies that you're fighting against, and change out your loadout accordingly.
Yeah, yeah, and certainly you've said a whole lot about this RPG. There isn't much more I could really say, but I do want to say that I do think the Eldrim series is genuinely one of the best, probably in my opinion, really up there. I don't know. I'm really hesitant to say it, but maybe the best RPG series on iOS, period. Just because it's so much like a traditional RPG that you might find, on console these days. I mean, maybe there's no voice acting and everything like that, but still mechanically, the way the story is written and told, it feels very much like a big RPG. And that's a great feeling to have when you're a blind person looking for an RPG to play. I think the way that game is those games, I should say, are designed is really, really phenomenal. So really, really happy it showed up in this list.
Yeah, that's one of those games too. Like at the end, when you look at the achievements and you played the whole way through and you think you've explored absolutely everything, you find out you've only seen like 25% of the game because there's
Right. You're like,
70,
whoa.
yeah, there's like 75% of the achievements are not unlocked, and you're like, oh my gosh, let me go back, and then you go back and you unlock another 10%. Like so, there's a lot of replayability, a lot of different ways to try to unlock different things in there. So and there was actually a fascinating thing that I interviewed the developer of that game, and there's a particular enemy that you face that just is brutal. Like I have not ever beaten it, but he said, I put this enemy in, and I put it in at such a high level that I thought it was unbeatable, but I just kind of put it out there to see if people could figure out how to beat it, and I didn't think they would, but they did. They know, I've never, he, the developer, has never beaten it, but from the game statistics, because he has an achievement, defeat this enemy, and people have managed to defeat it somehow. And he's like, yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
I just put it in there to just see if gamers can find a way. Like life finds a way, gamers find a way, and they
Gamers
did.
do find ways. They
Right.
really do.
Yeah. So that was that. I thought that was particularly fascinating.
Yeah, I love games that overwhelm you with content and surprise you with content.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, like how you think you've seen everything and then you find out, wait, you haven't seen anything yet.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's so great. All right, well, let's move on to number three, moving out of the RPG space into the word game space to a game called Word Voyance.
Yeah. Now this is fascinating. So in the prior 2 years, this is the third annual Game of the Year. A word game has never uh, really made it in the top five. So to see two that are coming up here is really exciting. So Word Voyance is basically Scrabble, or Words with Friends, if people know it from that, which is completely accessible for the blind. A really, just clean interface. Throw on some vertical navigation, easy to navigate around the board, easy to find where all the special tiles are. It really clearly lays out how to lay down tiles and spell words and play the Scrabble, which is kind of like a for those who might not know what Scrabble is, hopefully most people do, but basically a word game where you lay down a word, whatever computer, and then you might decide to then lay a word using the M and do microphone, and then I use the O and microphone to spell ostrich or whatever. All those would be
Yeah.
pretty high scoring points, but that's the point of the game until you use all your tiles and end up with the most points. So what I love about Word Voyance, it's been talked about for years of potentially coming out. Rumors that there would be a Scrabble game that would be completely accessible for the blind and visually impaired, and not only playable but playable over the internet. So I could play, a friend in Australia play Word Voyance and play a Scrabble-like game just like people do with Words with Friends. And it actually is that. I played Words with Friends as a sighted person back when I was sighted. Word Voyance is very much the exact same experience. You can play with your friends and have multiple games going, and just have that kind of experience. And whether you're playing with a sighted person or a blind person, you're just playing really at the same level. You're just playing Scrabble. It doesn't matter that if you're blind, you're at no disadvantage against a sighted person. It's just about your linguistic and word skills at that point. It's fully accessible to allow you to compete and play at the same level against your opponents.
Yeah. When I played this game for the first time, I was a little bit overwhelmed, I'll admit it, because I didn't grow up playing Scrabble to begin with. So I was a little overwhelmed. Like for instance, I didn't quite get right away. I mean, I've got it now, but I didn't quite get right away that you had to the word that you made had to go the opposite way of the word that your opponent had made, for instance. So you couldn't just go straight down off of their word if their word was also straight down.
Yeah.
Didn't work that way. But I learned. I got there. I would say at least for people who haven't played Scrabble before, there's a little bit of a learning curve. But once you get past that, it's very interesting, a lot of fun, and a true test of your ability to make words. Um, I thought of a game when I was playing it that's almost but not quite similar to this, which is called Crossly, which was not really Scrabble, but it was a competitive crossword puzzle game. and that was interesting in its own way too. But this is kind of more interesting in the sense because because you get to you're the one making the decisions of what the words you're making are,
Yeah.
whereas Crossley you're trying to solve a clue before your opponent does, and so on and so forth. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so again, for those who maybe never played Scrabble, as you are laying down these words on a grid, I can't remember if it's 12 by 12 or 30 by 13, something like that, the grid. As you're laying down the words, there are special tiles that might say triple letter score or double word score, which means, if you put each letter, the more unique the letter, like a Z is worth 10 points, an A is worth 1 point. So you also have a strategy of like, I need to formulate a word so that I drop a Z on this triple letter word. So I get 30 points off of it. Or, or lay the word down so I make sure I hit a double word score. So whatever I score, it's double. Or I'm going to lay down a word that kind of blocks my opponent from ever being able to use, one of these double word scores. So there's a lot of strategy besides, being able to form the word. It's also being able to form a word and use the bonus points that you can gain off the board appropriately. And now, I I have several members of my family, my mother-in-law, my sister, and my sister-in-law, all like Scrabble savants. I have played, back in the day when it was Words with Friends, I played with them, and they would just absolutely demolish me. I mean, it was just ugly and insane how good they were at it. So there's a lot of strategy besides just being able to formulate a word. You got to be able to, use the board appropriately to really be good at it. So, for those who want a word game challenge, and then not just playing against yourself, but playing against a real life human being, Word Voice is a great addition. I'm very excited that that's now available to the blind community.
Yeah, multiplayer accessible games are so rare, so it's really good to find one in Word Voyance. All right, moving on to number 2. We're getting close. We're getting close to the top here, but number 2, we have Fruit Pot 2.
Yes. So this is a casino slot-based game. Fruit Pot 1 came out several years ago, was successful. The Fruit Pot 2 is kind of the iteration on that. It's kind of the traditional, if you've ever done a slot machine, you pull the handle, the wheel spin, you're trying to get all the same symbols to score points and coins or new free spins. And kind of as you advance through this game, they kind of have this mechanic where you go to a mall, and at the mall you can buy more symbols for the slot machine, or the ability to do more holds or free spins or nudges. And you all kind of like purchase these things through the mall, and as you advance, more stores open, which allow you to get access to more things that you can add to your slot machine to kind of make it more complex. It's a nice game in that you can kind of pick it up, play it for 5 minutes, put it down, come back to it whenever you want. Has this kind of unique, mall component where you're always feeling like, oh, just gotta get a little further, and now I can open up the next store and see what's in there. So it always has you kind of striving to keep playing to kind of get to the next thing. Interesting. As I said, I try to review every single type of genre because, as I said, I want something for everybody. Casino slot games are not my thing, but clearly they are a thing of a wide portion of the group because it's got the second most votes this year as game of the year. So that I find a lot of satisfaction that I kind of took the time to play and review a game that's really not my type of game, but it is for some people that are in the group, and that's what I am really excited to see that it made it that effort of going and reviewing a game that's kind of outside of my wheelhouse really fit into somebody else's set of games that they like.
Yeah, I think a lot of the attractiveness of a game like this is really, and I talked about in with Magic Research how watching those numbers climb is kind of a dopamine hit, but this is that in a different way. I think this is more dopamine hit the game because there's something charming about it. like it goes from everything from the ways the sound effects you hear when you get some matching slot machines, slots, and the little things that you buy in the mall are like well described, and it's kind of written in a very charming way. Like everything has its own description when you buy it, and it's just like there's something to that. Like, there's personality here, and I think that's what draws people to a game like this. Not just the casino aspect. I mean, that could be part of it for some people too, absolutely. But I think the charm and personality of this game is what really draws people in.
Yeah, and I mean, compared to also pretty much every other game that's on this list, I mean, Magic's Research, Children Red Tide, Word Voyance, and then the number one, which I won't spoil. But I mean, they're all kind of like you got to think and their strategy, and you're like taxing your brain a little bit. Like this is just kind of like just spin it. Oh, look, I won! Yay! Like not too. There's a little bit of strategy in some of the nudge and holds, but nothing too taxing on your brain. You can just kind of relax, sit in while you're waiting in line or in the back of an Uber, just kind of play it and, just kind of tune out a little bit. And, you need those type of games
Yeah.
too, when you're just trying to, relax and, decouple from the day. So, again, there's a type of game for every type of person. And but again, this Fruit Pot 2 is a little different than all the other ones that are on the list.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very charming and it's very casual. It's great. Okay, well, I think with that, I think we are ready to unveil the number one game, the game of the year for the group. This is going to be a big one, folks. I think this is a very important acknowledgement of this game as game of the year. I'm very happy to see this win. But to make the official announcement, the game of the year is Xanagrams.
Yes, Xanagrams. Xanagrams is an anagram game created by Zach Tidwell. And what's really kind of exciting about this, particularly for mobile accessible games and having to win Game of the Year, is Zach has been a long time member of this group. I think he's like one of the first 50 people that have joined the group that now has thousands and thousands of people within the group. And he just originally joined as a lover of games, a blind individual who liked playing, accessible games. And over the years, he decided that he wanted to create a game. He taught himself, never had coded anything in his life. He went out and taught himself how to code in Swift and ultimately create a word game in Xanagrams. Again, for those who might not know what an anagram game is, it basically gives you a clue. It might say, whatever. The planet closest to the sun might be the clue. So it's Mercury. And then what you see is down at the bottom, there are a bunch of tiles, and those tiles will have 1 to 3 letters on them. So it might say, ME, then RCU, and then RY. You'll find somewhere in a jumble of tiles those letters. You'll pick those tiles in the proper order to spell Mercury. And hopefully I spelled Mercury right there. And then solve the clue. I also had to think like, hopefully Mercury is the first planet. I think I fooled myself. And then there's 6 clues in each game. And then as you kind of take the letters for Mercury out of the available tiles, you have fewer tiles to answer the other 5 questions until ultimately you've used up all the tiles to answer all 6 of the questions, and then you've won that round, and then move on. He's done it as well as where there's kind of a leaderboard where, depending how fast you answer and fewest mistakes you make in trying to answer, you get a score value that puts you on a leaderboard, so that you can see, how good am I at doing anagrams compared to other people who are playing the anagram games. And I forget how many. He has quite a few packages now that you can engage in. So I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of different clues at this point that you can play. And as you play the entire game of Xanagram. And he keeps adding new packages as time goes by as well. So, I'm just really excited and I'm proud of Zach. Again, he's one of our own, just a lover of games who decided that he was going to figure out how to do it, and just taught himself, how to code, and figured it all out, and got a game actually on the App Store and has people actually downloading and playing it. And he won his first game that he has ever put out. He not only won our Game of the Year, the Mobile Accessible Games Game of the Year, he also won AppleViz's Golden Apple Accessible Game of the Year. So, I mean,
Yeah.
he's seen real accolades for his efforts, which I'm just really excited. I know it's really excited and invigorated him to, drive, towards his next idea of gaming. So I think we've really rewarded somebody who's now going to continue to put out more and more games for our community. And I'm just really excited that, we got behind Zach and one of our own, to, who is putting out games, and his whole mission is to put out accessible games for the blind and visually impaired community.
Yeah, I think to me that is the biggest deal. Like my big thing, the reason that I think this is such a big deal that this game won is because it's his first game. When you're a new developer just starting out, you'd be happy with a game that does okay.
Yeah.
At least no one hates it, right?
Or a game that doesn't constantly crash.
Right, something like that. And this one is not just doing okay; it's doing fantastic. And this is how careers begin. This is absolutely how it happens. This is the encouragement that a new budding developer needs to continue to make great games, and that's what's going to happen here. And that's why I think this is such a big deal. I love the indie development scene, and to see a new one bursting on the scene with a great game that the blind can enjoy is really, really cool. And I'm really, really happy that Xanagrams took this one. Congratulations to Zach Tidwell and to Xanagrams for this fantastic Game of the Year award.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I love about it too is, I'm constantly trying to just make sure that the community realizes that behind every game there is a person who's working hard and putting a lot of effort in and trying their best, even when sometimes certain things don't succeed. And, with it being Zach, who's been in the group, who's, posted, people have seen his names even well before he even created a game, people are like, oh, I know him, like that's a real life person behind this. And I think it just humanizes it all a lot more, that hopefully people can, realize, what it takes and the effort that people are putting forth to create accessible games, and, do like they did for Zach, and just backing him and giving him support, and, going out and buying the game or reviewing the game, voting for the game. That's what we need to do around people who are taking the time and the effort to create accessible games for our community, because they don't have to, but they do, and that's great. And it's we should really reward those people who are taking the time to do it.
Yeah, support your developers, folks.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, we have done it. We have reached the pinnacle, the summit.
Excellent job, Brandon. I think everyone's quite pleased with your hosting job.
I am glad. I'm glad to hear you say that.
Is there anything that you have coming up that you want to tell the community about to keep their eyes peeled, or is everything under NDAs right now for you?
Well, most things in my life are NDA'd. But aside from the book, I'm doing a lot more live streaming these days. So if anyone wants to check me out playing, these days I'm playing some Last of Us 2 Remastered to show that game off a little bit, show off the accessibility features of that game. So if you want to check me out on live stream, you can do so again at twitch.tv/superblindman or youtube.com/superblindman. And I'll be playing something probably. And even if I'm not, you can check out my archives, because there's literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of me playing video games. So a lot of content to watch if you so choose.
Do you do that on a set schedule, or just like as you feel like doing it, you jump on there?
I can't promise consistency, because sometimes work related things just come up.
That's
but right. How dare I make games accessible instead of stream them? But I do as much as I can. So there's going to be more this year than there was last year. Last year I had to take a lot of streaming breaks because things just kept coming up and coming up. Right. But as far as I can tell, although I do have some things coming up this year, I believe there'll be more this year. Like right now, I know that I have a lot of time, so you'll be seeing streams from me at least for the next several weeks. I would say pretty regularly.
Nice. Excellent. Well, again, Brandon, I really appreciate you taking the time to play guest host and go through the Game of the Year. Again, everyone check out.
I was happy to do it.
Oh, yeah, you did a great job. Everyone check out Super Blind Man across all the different platforms that Brandon mentioned. Again, he is one of the people who's in the room, speaking on our behalf, trying to get games more accessible. And again, we're starting to see that expansion. It's not just Last of Us now; it's Forza, it's Mortal Kombat, all things that Brandon has played a role in trying to make more accessible for us. So,
And there will be more.
yes, we're very excited. So, again, check out his various platforms. Subscribe, like, do all those things to help support Brandon as well. So, again, thank you so much for doing this for me. We really appreciate you being the guest host.
Yeah, thank you very much.